Hey, oh, I've realized I've still got my light on up there and it's making me look really quite scary. So give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to turn off my light there and then we'll be good to go. I look all sunburnt. There we go. That's a bit better. I can confirm I am not sunburnt just outside London, sadly. Let me just turn this down. There we go. Okay, so can someone let me know that you can hear me? I had a complete disaster a few weeks ago, so I would like to check that you can hear me. So somebody just ping me and let me know that you can hear me. Thank you, Flora. Thank you, Mr. Paul Gallagher. Thank you very much. Common surname, that Gallagher. Cool. Awesome. Thank God. I now constantly panic about the sound on this thing. Okay, so welcome to another Amazon interview with free coaching session. I'm very excited to see so many people here already. So usually I wait a little bit for people to arrive because it usually takes like 5 odd minutes for people to get here and for it to pop up on YouTube. So in the meantime, I'm just going to say hello to a few people. Let me know where you're from. So Kai, welcome back. Thank you. Good to see you back again. You're from sunny San Francisco. I hope the weather's good there. I think the weather's supposed to be good there most of the time. Okay, we've got, now if I pronounce your name wrong, I'm sorry. Shireen, hello. I spotted you on YouTube, didn't I? You mentioned a comment. So I'm really, really glad you made it this time. Awesome. Sarug, hello, welcome back. Lovely to see you again. Flora, such a lovely name. I love that name, Flora. Vibav, yes, great. Thank you. Welcome back. Michelle Singleton, welcome's your first time. Well, I hope it won't be your last and that you'll enjoy it and learn lots. I try to have a little bit of fun, although that's a bit weird when I'm talking to myself, but welcome. Thank you for giving up your time to come and meet me here. Who else have we got? Andrada, hello from Romania. Cool, from Romania. I think you might be my first person from Romania, at least that have told me that you're from Romania. We've got Chicago, Illinois. Lovely. Always wanted to go to Chicago. Los Angeles. Lovely. City of Angels. Welcome, Flora from Los Angeles. Western Florida. Florida is definitely on my holiday plans for 2022. I have my fingers tightly crossed I will make it to Florida in 2022. Where else have we got everyone from? So Paul Gallagher, I know you're from upstairs, so that's useful. I have my husband be here so that we could check the sound. It's not from a very glamorous place, I promise you. Jagdish, come from Texas. Lovely. Awesome. Okay, so Dallas, Texas. Whoa, Egypt. Not that Dallas isn't exciting. I'm sorry. I realized I jumped quite quickly from Dallas to Egypt. Dallas is fabulous. Don't get me wrong. But Egypt, I think you're my second person from Egypt, Hassan. So thank you very much for joining. Okay, so let's get going and we'll see who arrives. Now, the first thing I will say to you guys is I was very, very lucky. 2 days ago, I managed to get my COVID vaccine. So I am very grateful for that. But it did make me very ill. So I'm not feeling at my best at the moment. So I do apologize if I am not my usual jumpy, skippy self. But I will do my best to keep going. Second thing then is I'm going to give you the spiel. If you've been here before, I apologize. I do something else whilst I go through this, but we do have some new people, which is always exciting. So I am Gigi. I am the Amazon interview whiz. This is me on my jumper. My hair's grown a bit since I created this version of me, but it was intended to be me. I am the Amazon interview whiz. I interviewed and bar raised at Amazon across about 5 years, and I have hired literally hundreds of Amazonians. I bar raised across tech, non-tech, all over the world, different countries, you name it, I've done it. So trust me, I know exactly what it takes to get hired at Amazon. Since leaving Amazon, I set up my own Amazon interview preparation kind of company, and my model is a little bit different. I offer an e-learning program to help you prep for your Amazon interview, which means you can get pretty much exactly what an interview coach might teach you in terms of your preparation at about 90% less of the cost of a normal Amazon interview coach. I have a big motto, which is all about Amazon interview expertise for all, which you may have come across if you look at my LinkedIn posts. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And that means then, because of that, I have my YouTube channel. I do lots of posting on LinkedIn. And of course, I do this free session. So I'm absolutely committed to that. In terms of the session, just a bit of housekeeping. I don't offer specific technical advice. There are like 250, probably more technical job families in Amazon. No one person can be an expert in all of those. So I'm certainly not an expert in all of them. My job as bar raiser was to be an expert in interview technique and strategy, and of course, the leadership principles, to be able to see the leadership principles through any type of skill. The other thing is that I will try and pick questions that I think are probably as useful for as many people as possible. So I apologize if I skip over your question. Doesn't mean to say it's not a valid question or one that you deserve to have answered, but I want to make sure I answer questions that the majority of people can get value from. And then the last thing is that please just don't ask me for general tips. Quite often people say, hi, I'm applying for a program manager role. Any general tips? I have my YouTube channel, which has 2.5 hours worth of free general tips. So if you're looking just for something more general, I would say just go dig into that, have a cup of tea with you or whatever your national preferred beverage is, and take some time to plow through all that. Pretty much most questions people have ever asked me over the past 5 years is built into my YouTube channel. Okay, so the way it works, if you haven't been here before, is you guys can ask me questions. Just pop it into the chat on the right-hand side, and I will just scroll through and pick the ones and get going and pin them up. Occasionally, it kind of jumps up, and then you'll get a pregnant pause from me whilst I try and catch up, but generally that seems to work. So we can get going. Okay. Hello, welcome. Oh, welcome back. I remember you from the last session. So thank you, Ayatha. Welcome back. I'm glad you had the experience and decided it was worth coming back. I am going to scroll to the top because Kai got in here very early with questions. So I'm going to answer Kai's questions. In the meantime, please do just to dig in and throw your questions out there. There are no silly questions, I promise you. I've probably heard them all before. Just put it down there. And if you have the question, then it's worthy of an answer. So Kai, welcome back. And your question, from San Francisco, nice. On the question, I'm going to pin this, wasn't I? Let's just pin this. There we go. So, okay, so you want me to tell you the leadership principles associated with these questions. So I guess you got these questions at an interview quite recently. So the question of a time when you failed, is that ownership or I'll write a lot? Usually it's I'll write a lot. Sometimes ownership questions are more around when you think you're not going to achieve a commitment, something like that. Those are usually where the direction of ownership. If someone's asking you very specifically and uses the word failed, it's probably an I'll write a lot question. Then your next one, a calculated risk question. Is that bias for action or I'll write a lot? That was probably bias for action. Bias for action has kind of two facets to it. One is the concept of risk analysis, weighing up the pros and cons of something and then deciding you've got enough information to take action and going. And the other part of bias for action, the other facet of bias for action is what I call hustle. So just like getting going, not procrastinating. Not dangerous hustle. That's something I warn people against in my Amazon Interviewers masterclasses. Dangerous hustle is just basically getting going in complete ignorance and throwing yourself out there, not really knowing what you're doing. But there you go. Those are the answers to those two, Kai. I hope if you did have them at interview that you managed to get the right one. If you didn't, honestly, it's not the end of the world. at interview, although your interviewer is going to be asking you about specific leadership principles, if you happen to deviate off and start giving them evidence about other leadership principles, it's not a bad thing. They are effectively going to be gathering all of the data and making assessments of you about all of the leadership principles. So if you've deviated off and you've perhaps answered what was meant to be a bias for action with our write a lot evidence, it's still good evidence of leadership principles in Amazon. So honestly, if you didn't make exactly the right choice of your previously crafted questions, don't worry too much. They will have got information from you that is good and valuable. Okay, thanks for that question, Kai. I'm going to move on now. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, see what we've got. Okay. Oh, Vibhav from India. Hello, welcome. Hossam. Oh, you have a panel next Friday. Fingers crossed for you. Big fingers crossed. And Jeannie's back as well. Jeannie Cobb, welcome back. Morning from Vegas. I won't go into my aspirations for Vegas, but welcome back, Jeannie. Okay. Let's see what we've got. Okay. All right. Yatha, I'm just going to pin your question there. So usually the questions are like, tell me about a time. How do you know which leadership principle that is? You won't know, Ayatha, until you listen to the second part of the question. So the whole concept of the way that Amazon interviews is that they believe that the best evidence of how you're going to behave in the future comes from how you've behaved in the past. And so that's why they ask you questions about examples from your past, because they think if you've done really well in the past, then that will be evidence that you can do really well in the future. So almost all questions will be prefaced by something like, tell me about a time when, or give me an example when. It's all about when, really, because they want you to fish back into your past and pull out examples of the behaviors that you displayed in the past. So kind of assume that's a given at the first part of the question. Really, the bit that you have to be paying attention to is what comes after the when. So it could be when you had a very difficult customer interaction, or it could be when you didn't have enough data to make a decision, but you had to make a judgment, or when you made a terrible mistake, going back to the questions earlier. So just pay attention to the second bit. All of the clues for which leadership principle they're asking you for is in the second bit. My biggest tip for you, Yatha, is write down the question. So once you've listened to it, spend a few seconds and just say to your interviewer, is it okay if I write down the question, and literally write the question down that they've asked you? And the reason why I make that recommendation is, number one, then you won't forget the question and meander off on a different path. But number two, it gives you a few seconds whilst you're writing it down to pay attention to what you think are the key words in the question, so you can then hook onto what leadership principle they're talking about. So if we go back to Kai's question at the very beginning, the word risk was in there. Well, risk is a word that is synonymous with bias for action. So the minute you spotted that word risk in the question, you would know that's bias for action. Let me think about the examples that I have set up ready for bias for action. Okay, so thank you for the question. I hope that was helpful to you. I am going to move on. Oh, it's hotting up now. I like it. It's all gets a bit slow going at the beginning, but now it's hotting up. Okay. Okay, so Kai, you've got a question, so I'm going to go back to you. Your panel is on Friday. Good luck. Actually, I've got a few candidates whose panels are on Friday. Friday seems to be a big day for loops at Amazon. So, and in different countries as well. So busy on Friday at Amazon. Okay, so I mentioned that in general, the general rule is that each interviewer will ask 2 leadership principles. Is that one example for each leadership principle and then follow-up questions? Okay, so that will differ quite a lot, Kai, depending on what level you're interviewing at. So as a general rule, my expectation as a bar raiser would be that for L6, so that's kind of senior something manager roles or above, that my interviewers would get through a minimum of 3 questions in 45 minutes or an hour. They will be given usually 2 leadership principles. So I would expect them to cover 2 questions on one leadership principle and 1 question on another. The reason why 3 was my expectation for that level and above is they should be quite meaty, complex examples once you're functioning at an L6 level. So the 3 questions is just about the right amount of time to get into good detail, but any less than that and you're not going to get enough examples. You want to gather as much breadth of data as possible from a candidate. So if you only get 1 or 2 examples, you're not going to have a good breadth of data. So L6 or above, as bar raiser, I'd expect my interviewers to achieve 3 questions, not a lot more. Once you're moving down to more junior roles, your kind of manager roles, the L5s and the L4s, then the number goes up because the types of examples that the candidates can offer is usually much simpler and therefore they take less time to explain. So if I was bar raising on an L5 to L4 loop, actually I'd be quite comfortable seeing 4, maybe even 5 questions being asked in an hour. So don't know what level you're interviewing at, but hopefully that gives you good guidance on what to expect. Okay, hope that was helpful to you and everybody else. It's a good question. I'm not sure that I've had that one exactly before. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Okay, Hossam, okay, just pinning your question. You've been requested to do the written sample. That's fine, understood. And it's an example about actions based on judgment. Is that I'll write a lot? Yes, that's an I'll write a lot one. That was pretty quick. I'm surprised you weren't given an option. Usually candidates are given an option of 2 differently behavioral questions to answer in their written sample, but maybe that's changing. But yes, the one you've said is I'll write a lot. Okay, what else have we got? Okay. Shireen, I'm going to post yours. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, by the way. Feel free to correct me on YouTube if I've mispronounced you. Okay, if the interviewer says 1 last question but ends up asking 3 more, is it usually a sign that you've got his interest, or is he not satisfied and is diving deeper for my sake? Well, to be fair, it could be a number of things. So it might be that actually they've got plenty of time on their hands and therefore they feel they can ask you a few more questions to fill up the time and gather more data for you. It could also mean that they haven't quite got what they're looking for and therefore they're asking a few more questions in order to be able to get what they're looking for. Or the other thing it might be, and I don't know if this, if you found yourself running over in terms of your interview, but the other thing that does happen quite regularly is if the next interviewer is running late, they'll ping the interviewer that is in the room with, or not in the room anymore, obviously, because it's virtual. They'll ping on the internal messaging platform called Chime, the person who you're currently interviewing for, and say, I'm running a little bit late. I'm really sorry. Could you just fill time? And that interviewer might just take the opportunity to ask you some more questions because they know the other person isn't going to be there for a while. So I have to be honest with you, it could be any number of things. But I would say if you were given more opportunity to provide more evidence, that can only be a good thing, because if they asked you for more evidence because you hadn't given them quite what they were looking for at the beginning, then that's amazing, because then you've had the opportunity to fill that gap. If they're asking you more questions because they just think you're so interesting and they want to spend more time with you, then that's a great thing as well. And if they're asking you more questions because the next person in the line isn't quite ready to arrive, then that's still great for you because you've been able to give them even more evidence. So either way, I would just take that as being a good opportunity that you were able to secure and sleep easy at night. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for you. I'm going to move on. Okay. Flora, what are they looking for? Invent and simplify for non-tech roles. They're looking for what the leadership principle describes, which is coming up with new ways of doing things that simplify processes, making things simpler for customers, making things simpler for your business. Invention is not a technical, is not purely for the tech world. There are many, many ideas and inventions that come but from people that don't do tech. An invention doesn't need to be a technical thing, right? An invention is just something new. So you could invent a new way of writing a document that gets rid of a load of chaff and just goes straight to the point. You could invent a new spreadsheet to report something that has always been a pain in the, I'll be careful what I say, has always been difficult to report because everyone's always had to go to 5 different sources, and you work out a way to pull it all into a single spreadsheet. That's not technical. You don't have to have technical skills to be able to do that, other than being able to manage Excel, which some might say is technical. But so invention is all about just thinking about new ways of doing things and coming up with solutions that simplify for you and for your customer. So just go back to the leadership principle. It's all in there, and just think about how you in your past have come up with new ideas, new ways of working, ways of making your life easier, ways of making your manager's life easier, ways of making customers' lives easier. That's all it is. Okay, I hope that was helpful, Flora. Again, I love your name. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to okay, Chess Fix. Sorry for the long pregnant pause, guys. I was just reading this from Chess Flicks. Sorry, Chess Flicks. Your recruiter sent you a worksheet with questions that you're supposed to do the STAR method on. That's interesting. I've never heard of a recruiter sending anyone a worksheet before. Some of these seem impossible, though. I'm not sure how to talk about the most innovative thing that you've done. So I'm a little unclear, Chess Flicks, if this worksheet is just part of your recruiter's preparation method. Like, different recruiters have different preparation methods. Some get a bit more involved with their candidates than others. I don't think this is actually part of the proper recruitment process, although you can tell me if I'm wrong. If you're not sure how to talk about the most innovative thing that you've done, so I would challenge you to really think back at all of the things that you've done in your career and try and think about things that were different and interesting and that nobody had done before. The truth is, in your interview, there's like 127 questions in the Amazon interview question bank. And sometimes you just won't have an example that fits the question that your interviewer is asking you for. So in that situation, my advice to people is try and think of an example that is broadly in the right direction, that you think kind of fits. Say to your interviewer, this is the kind of, give them a 10,000 feet answer in terms of, this is the thing that I'm thinking about sharing with you. Does that take me in the right direction for the question that you're asking? They might say no, because where it's slightly different is where it matters. In which case, if you really don't feel you have a good example, I recommend you just say to the interviewer, I'm sorry, I actually don't have a great example for that. I don't want to waste your time or my opportunity. Could I please have another question? And you are absolutely free and able to ask your interviewer for another question. Try not to do it too many times, particularly in a panel, because when everyone gets together at the end, it will become quite clear if you've asked everybody for a different question. But once or twice across the course of your full loop panel, I use the terms interchangeably, sorry, will be fine. So chess flicks, if you don't have a good example for that, you don't have a good example for that. You can't make one up. So again, I'm assuming this is just a prep piece. And it's good because if in your prep piece you come across an example that you don't have off the top of your head, then it's worth spending a bit of time to see if you can come up with one. But if you can't, at least you'll know if that question comes up in interview, you know already that you don't have a good example for it and you don't need to waste any time. You can just ask for a new question. So I'm not sure that entirely exactly answered your question, but hopefully it gave you some direction in terms of where to head next. Thank you for the question. I'm going to move on. Okay, so Kai, you're interviewing for an L6. So in relation to how many questions you can expect, I would expect your interviewers to ask you 3 per interview. I love this question. This is such a great question. I'm going to pin it because no one's ever asked me this question before. This is a brilliant question. Okay, Iatha. Speaking of Friday, which day would I recommend for loop? Is an interviewer in a good mood on a Friday? I honestly don't know the answer to that. I think everybody has different good days of the week. By Friday, I was not I was exhausted, so I'm not sure I was as good on a Friday as I was on a Wednesday. I'm not a good Monday person, but I honestly don't think there's any particular special good day of the week for interviewing. You just every day is statistically, I think, as likely or unlikely to be a good day for the interviewer, particularly if you've got panel, right? You're going to have at least 4 or 5 different interviewers. So honestly, I wouldn't worry about it. Don't overthink about the day of the week unless you have a good or bad day. I suppose that's the only consideration. If you know, like me, by Friday you're like fit for nothing, then try and make sure that you get the recruiter to do your best day of the week. So I guess that means Wednesdays, I should always try and make sure I have my future interviews on. So definitely think about it in that context, but don't worry about thinking about it in the context of the interviewers on the other side of the screen. Such a good question. I love that one. Thank you. Okay. Amanda Williams, you've got a panel on Friday as well. Everyone's got a panel on Friday. What's going on? It's going to be a massive day of interviews at Amazon, and you're in the middle of my basics masterclass. Thank you very much for believing in the Amazon Interview Wiz Academy to support you. Fingers crossed. I hope it all goes well for you. I do have, Amanda, a special members Q&A session tomorrow evening, which hopefully you've got an email about. If you haven't, come back to me on DM and I can tell you how to get there. So it's for paying Amazon Interview Wiz Academy members only. It's a little bit more, there's fewer of us, so I managed to get more detailed and direct with the questions. So if you want to join that and you haven't got the details, come back to me on DM on LinkedIn and I will get you the details to join. Okay, if I don't hear from you beforehand though, good luck. Such a big day Friday, crazy. Okay. Oh, Shireen, okay. I will really try and remember that should I see you again. Thank you for correcting me. I appreciate that. Cool. So okay, Shireen. So they weren't, sorry, going back to Shireen's question from earlier. They weren't new questions. They were just follow-up questions. Yeah, no, follow-up questions is fine. Follow-up questions is what the interview is all about, right? You say some stuff and I ask you questions. So you can't really read into it because it's a case of I'm digging for more detail and I'm interested in more stuff. So it might be that you haven't told me what I want and I'm asking you more questions to get to what I want. Or it might be that you've just said some really cool and interesting stuff and you've just piqued my curiosity and I'm asking you more and more questions. So again, I can't tell you whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But again, the more you get to talk and give details, the better it is for you because the more evidence you're gathering. or your interviewer is gathering. Okay, so moving on then. Okay, Hassan, great question. Definitely going to pin this one. So, should you get prepared for salary negotiation questions at the end of panel, or will it happen after or later in the day? Okay, so you should never be having a conversation about salary with any of your interview panel. That's not Amazon's process. That is not the purpose of the interview. So you should never be having that conversation in interview. You should be having that conversation about your salary expectations at the beginning of the process of applying for Amazon. So I would expect or recommend that you get your salary expectations on the table with your recruiter at the very early stages, ideally before round one, but definitely not much after round one. If you have not yet got your salary expectations on the table and you're all the way at panel, then the conversation will be appropriate to happen if and when you hear back that you've got an offer, because the next conversation you'll speak to your recruiter will be when they get the answer back from panel. So at that point, they'll make you an offer. What they might do is talk to you, tell you that you have had an inclined outcome, and then ask you what your salary expectations are. So be prepared to have that conversation with your recruiter on the other side of panel. If you can get it in earlier, and if you're having a pre-meeting with your recruiter and no one's mentioned salary or compensation yet, it's definitely worth dropping it in. But the earlier on you can have a conversation about your salary expectations, the better, because you do not want the experience that one of the candidates I was supporting had, which was she went all the way through to getting an offer, like 3 rounds, first round, second round panel, only to discover that actually they couldn't offer her the compensation that she needed. And it turned out to be a complete waste of time for everybody. You don't want that. So the sooner you can have the salary conversation, the better. I can send you resources on an amazing recruiter at Amazon, Amy Miller, recruiter in Yoga Pants. She has a whole playlist on her YouTube channel about salary negotiation. I'm not a recruiter. It's not my area of expertise, but it is Amy's area of expertise. So if you want that, I can send you the link to Amy. Again, contact me through LinkedIn or put a comment in YouTube on one of my videos, and I will send you Amy's details. Okay, thank you for the question. I'm going to move on now. Ooh, big jump, big jump, big jump. Okay. Right, sorry, I got a little bit lost there. Okay, so Vibhav, I'm going to post your question. You've been informed that you have your bar raiser round next Friday. It is very unusual to be told that you are meeting the bar raiser. I'm not sure that's helpful for anybody to be told that, but okay, you've been told you're meeting the bar raiser. You're interviewing for an SDE1. Very good. How important are the leadership principles for a junior role like this? They are just as important as they would be as if you were interviewing for an senior vice president role. The Amazon leadership principles are everything. And I genuinely mean everything when it comes to interviewing at Amazon. You will obviously be tested on your technical skill, especially if you're going in for an SDE role. That's software development engineer for everybody, if you don't know. Obviously, you will be tested for your technical capabilities. But really, even if you are the most incredible technical genius, if you do not raise the bar when you're tested on the leadership principles, you are not getting into Amazon. So how important are the leadership principles? More important than your technical skills. So make sure you prep those leadership principles. Now, I know sometimes it's hard for more junior candidates because they don't have the breadth of experience, and sometimes they need to repeat examples more times than someone more senior. That's fine, but make sure you do prep for all of those possible 14 leadership principles, Vibhav, because the worst thing would be if you're really strong technically, but you haven't done your prep and you don't prove that you're raising the bar on the leadership principles. That would be bad for everybody. So please do get all of those leadership principles. You can download them from the Amazon website and dissect them, go through them line by line. Obviously, you can sign up to my Amazon Interviewers Leadership Principle Masterclasses that will literally deconstruct them to their nth degree for you. But if you don't wish to do that, you can do it yourself by going through all of the leadership principles that you can get straight from the Amazon website. So fingers crossed for you. Good luck, but don't neglect the leadership principles. It doesn't matter how junior you are or senior, in fact. Okay, thank you for the question. I'm going to move on now. Okay, Jenna, you've done 3. So I'm just reading Jenna's 3 in a row, and then I'll pin one of them. Okay. Okay. Oh, Jenna, there's like a novel here. All right, Jenna. So I don't know which one of Jenna's to pin. So I'll pin one and then I'll talk you guys through the rest because they're good questions. All right, so Jenna had her panel interview yesterday and she got lots of questions that were quite negative. Tell me about a mistake. Tell me about a time you failed. Tell me about a time you received tough feedback. Oh, and now I can't see it. And the other one was pretty general. Tell you about a project that you've worked on. Tell me about a project with a target. Okay, so let me talk you through the first bit. So I think it's kind of coincidence that they were all rather negative because I can see the leadership principles in this. So let me tell you what the leadership principles were. So tell me about a time you made a mistake. So that's an I'll write a lot question. Tell me about a time you failed. That's also an I'll write a lot question. Tell me about a time you received tough feedback. That's an earns trust question. So I'm guessing that your interviewer was assigned I'll write a lot and earns trust as their leadership principles for your interview. Okay. A question about tell me about a project you worked on. That is a very vague question. And usually I wouldn't be overly impressed as the bar raiser if one of my interviewers asked something that general, because really you could tell me anything. It's not going to quickly get you to the leadership principle evidence that you're looking for. So I can't tell you why they asked you that. I wouldn't be particularly happy with that as a question as a bar raiser if I saw that in notes. Tell you about a project with a target. That feels to me a little bit like a deliver results question. Now, usually that type of question would be followed up with, tell me about a project with a target that you thought was unreasonable, or tell me about a project with a target where you materially overperformed against those targets. Those would be more complete deliver results questions. Next bit for Jenna, and this is useful for all of you guys because I will tell you about this part of the process. So let me just unpin this. I know I'm going deep into Jenna here, but there is usefulness in this for all of you, I promise you. So Jenna says she thinks her bar raiser was a trainee. He seems to be getting a lot of help by another person who was on the call. Do I think this is why you've got such an unusual mix of questions? So I don't think the mix was unusual per my conversation a second ago, although I do feel that those last 2 questions, far be it from me to criticize another Amazon interviewers, in my opinion, those last 2 questions were a bit incomplete. But yes, it is that sounds to me like you had a trainee person, whether they were a bar raiser or not. I'm not quite sure from your feedback, but Amazon has a qualification process for their interviewers. So, gosh, I said it a lot. they have a qualification process for their interviewers. In order to qualify as an interviewer at Amazon, you have to start off by being shadowed by a qualified interviewer. I did that because usually they're in the room, but of course that doesn't happen anymore. They will be on the other end of the phone, and they would listen in to the interviewer and help them along with the interview if they have to. In an ideal world, that person stays silent and doesn't have to intervene in the interview. Then what happens is, oh, sorry, I did it the wrong way around. You as the trainee start off shadowing somebody. So the expert interviews you and the trainee listens, and then they swap places. Then the trainee is the one leading the interview and the expert is the person who listens in. For bar raising, what will happen is the interviewer will run the interview. They will be a trainee bar raiser, and another bar raiser will sit on the phone in the background and intervene if they have to in the actual interview itself. It is incredibly rare for a shadow bar raiser to get very heavily involved in the actual interview questions of the trainee bar raiser who's leading the interview. Because if you've got to the point where you are a trainee bar raiser, you should already be a very experienced interviewer. And really the role of the shadow bar raiser in the trainee experience of a Brit bar raiser in training is much more at the debrief stage, where they actually listen in to the trainee bar raiser running a debrief and help coach and support them to get a better outcome in the debrief. I mean, I'm sure it's not impossible, Jenna, that it was a bar raiser who was a trainee bar raiser who was interviewing you and a bar raiser was interrupting them in interview. But that would be very rare, because by the time you're a Brit, you should be a very experienced interviewer and you shouldn't need someone in the background interrupting you and helping you run the actual interview itself. So I hope that wasn't too discombobulating for you, but it does look like they were really clear on the leadership principles that they were looking for you in terms of R, write a lot, and earns trust. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Woo. Moving on. Okay, quick one for GW. So GW, you have your panel next week with 5 interviews for a senior role, and you'll ask me whether you think it should be broken up across a couple of days or just do it in one day. They offer that as something new. That hasn't always been on offer to candidates. Certainly, I think that's something pretty new for the past year or so. Usually you can get a choice. It's up to you, I think, GW. Just decide what works better for you. It honestly makes no difference to, oh, sorry, pinging away there. It makes no difference on the Amazon side, because what happens is the interviewers all interview you completely independently of each other. They don't speak to each other after they've interviewed you until they get to debrief. They don't look at any information from anybody that's interviewed you before they interview you until they have entered all of their information and placed their vote on the Amazon Hire system, which is where all of the process is managed. Once they've clicked that button on their vote, then they can see what everybody else said. But before that, they can't see anything. So it's a very isolated process as an interviewer at Amazon until you submit your vote. So it makes zero difference to your chances as a candidate, whether it's all done on the one day or whether it's split across. So really, it's all about what works for you. So if you're the type of person that knows you just get in the zone, and once you're firing on all cylinders, you don't want to stop, then have it in one day. If you're one of these people that gets tired and you want to be able to stop, reflect, think about what you might do differently if you had the chance, you then, I would suggest, should take the 2 days. You can do a tranche in the first day, take a break, have a rest, reflect, think about how you want to change your approach, and do the rest of it another day. It's all about what works for you. It makes no difference whatsoever inside Amazon. Cool. Good question, though. Hope everyone else, I think, now gets that option. So hopefully that's useful for everybody else as well. Okay. Oh, Jenna, you're an Academy student. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I hope you're finding it useful. Chess flicks. It's a prep method. I thought so. Cool. Okay. Kai, how do you sign up for tomorrow's session? Go to page 2 of any of the Leadership Principle Masterclass support sheets, and you will see the private link to get into the Discord community, which is where I do all my QAs. So if you just go to page 2 of your preparation of your masterclass worksheets for any of the courses other than Customer Obsession, because that one's free, and if you're not paying, you're not getting in. You'll find the link there. And if you still can't find it, message me on LinkedIn and I will point you in the right direction. Okay, cool. Let's move on now. Oh. Okay, Habanera. Apologies if I've said your name wrong there. Habanera 80. Okay. Okay, so you interviewed 2 months ago and you didn't receive an offer. Okay, you are one of very many. Don't worry, the majority of people, sadly, will not get an offer when they interview. You're now recycled for an L6. Okay, PM. Okay. And you have a shortened loop for a different role. Okay, that's good. Oh, you've got another thing down here. Let me just reread that. You wanted to add that recruiter connected you to the hiring manager for this role, which is a better fit. And you've a shortened loop, 3 interviews. Okay. So the good news is that that is a really good sign. So it looks like, and you haven't mentioned whether the new loop is still for an L6 or whether it's for an L5. So I'm going to assume it's for an L6. So basically, I think what happened to you was they did your interview. They think you're a really strong candidate, but you didn't have the strength in the key leadership principles that they're looking for in that role. So when they interview you at Amazon, you're going to be interviewed for, well, they're going to be trying to gather data on all 14 leadership principles. They're not actually going to be able to ask you questions on all 14 leadership principles because there just isn't enough time. You'll probably only at max ever be asked questions on 10. But in those 10 answers, they'll be looking for data on all 14 leadership principles. But there will be leadership principles for that role that are the really, really important ones. And if you want to know which ones those are, you literally have to go through the job description. So just a quick example. Here's a job description for one of my mock interview candidates. And I have literally, you can see, gone through this line by line, underlined keywords and noted which leadership principles I think those keywords are directing me towards. So that's what you need to do. And what will have happened, I think, in your example, is the key leadership principles that they were looking for that role, you weren't strong enough for them. But when they look at the picture overall, they felt you were a really strong candidate. So what they've done is they found a different type of role that they think works much better for where you were particularly strong. And because they feel confident about you, they have dropped down the number of people in the loop and created a bit of a mini loop for you so that, number one, you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole again, but actually they feel confident enough that they don't need as many people on the loop as they did the first time based on your experience from the first time. So I can't give you any tips about what to do differently because actually it looks to me like you probably did all of the right things the first time round. It just so happens that your strengths lie in a different area to the job that you applied for initially. So I would say do exactly the same thing as before, other than get hold of that job description. If you haven't got it yet, get hold of the job description for the new role and please do as I did and go through it line by line and really try and work out which leadership principles are the key leadership principles for the role. Good luck. Fingers crossed for you. I hope it goes well. Okay. Moving on then. Okay, so I'm going to pin this question. Actually, I just need to do a time check. Okay, we've got 10 minutes, so we're doing well. So Vibithi, apologies if I got your name spelt wrong there. You have a panel coming in 2 days. Your recruiter recommends only 10 leadership principles. Do I prepare for the rest? 4 left out ones are I'll write a lot, learn and be curious, hire and develop, and frugality. So can I just check, has your recruiter actually sent you a list of the 10 leadership principles that they recommend? Can you just ping me and let me know whether they actually sent you the list? In the meantime, whilst we're waiting for that answer, anybody else got any more questions? Because I think I'm all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to just scroll back up and see if there's anything that I missed. I don't think I missed anything. Nope, don't think I missed anything, unless anybody else thinks I did. Ah, okay. So Diego, hola, ¿qué tal? Joined us from Spain. Welcome, thank you. Gosh, have you only just joined us? Like, we've only got 10 minutes left, so I hope you haven't just joined us and you've missed all of it. But if you have, you'll be able to pick it up on the live playback. Okay, so yes, they sent you a list. You're a lucky person. Wow. Wow. If your recruiter has decided to send you the list of 10 leadership principles, then I'm very surprised that they did that for you, but you lucky, lucky person, because I would say to you, that is very likely to be the exact 10 that has been teed up for panel. I'm not sure they're supposed to do that. So I would say with large confidence, you can probably just prepare those 10, but be a little bit cautious, because I would hate to tell you, ignore the rest. You'll never get asked questions, because who knows? So I would just say to you, really prepare for those 10, but see if you can get yourself into a position where the 10 that you are preparing for, the examples that you've got for those 10, if you were asked questions for the other 4 that you haven't specifically prepared for, that you can just respin the examples that you are preparing for the 10 to meet those 4. Because I'm sure your recruiter wouldn't set you up for this, but sometimes interviewers just go rogue and there's a particular question that they like that they ask. It doesn't happen very often. They're supposed to stick to the leadership principles that they're given, but people are people. They'll always randomly do something rogue. And the worst thing would be is if you were just caught completely off guard and you had nothing prepared for those other 4 leadership principles. So double down on the 10, but just practice a little bit, seeing if you can flex one of those 10 for each of the 4 leadership principles that aren't on the list. Guys, this is very rare, by the way. Very few of you will have such a generous recruiter who will give you the list of exactly the leadership principles that you're going to get at a panel. So count yourself very lucky. Everybody else, don't count on it. You can ask, but don't count on it. Okay. Thank you for the question. Okay, so moving on then. Sorry, pregnant pause. Okay. Jumping around the place now. I've completely lost control of this. Okay. So, Kai, should you come up with 8 examples and recycle a couple of the examples, since I'm likely to be asked 12 leadership principles? Thoughts? Okay. So, in an ideal world, you would be able to come up with unique examples for every single question that you're asked, because that would then show a huge breadth of incredible work that you've done in your past, and everybody will just be mind blown by how brilliant you are. But the truth is, that's rare. None of us are consistently superstars every single day of the week in our jobs. So the reality is, we're all going to have to recycle 1, 2, 3 of our questions. the best strategy is to come up with examples that you can flex, right? So a really, really impressive performance in a situation or a project or whatever it is will always have multiple leadership principles bubbling up in it. It's just impossible to only ever be one thing on any given day of the week. So find examples that have elements of different leadership principles and craft ways to flex that example to meet those different leadership principles. So I demonstrate how you can do that in my Amazon interview preparation masterclass. I take the one single example and I demonstrate how you can use it for one leadership principle and then how you can completely recraft it for another leadership principle. That's usually the best way to prepare to cover all 14 leadership principles. If you do that, you only have to come up with 7 examples, because those 7 you can then flex to be one or another. What we do recommend, what everyone will recommend to you, is that you have at least 2 examples that you could use for a leadership principle. So you have 2 different examples that you can flex to be different things. And when you flex them, if you match them under a single leadership principle, you will always have 2 examples per leadership principle that you could potentially use. So you don't have to do millions and millions of examples, but you do need to make sure that you have enough examples to cover the breadth of all 14, as long as you can recraft some big, juicy, interesting examples. I hope that was helpful, Kai. Okay, moving on. Okay. So Vibhav, okay, are Amazon interviews elimination based? You have your 4th next week. So does that mean you've cleared the 3 rounds? Yeah, that's exactly how it's worked. It's an obstacle course, for lack of a better explanation. You clear the 1st round, and that means that you are now moved on to the 2nd round. You clear the 2nd round, and that means you're then on to the 3rd round. It's very unusual for someone to have 4 rounds, although I heard of someone the other day who had 8, which is like a marathon. I've never heard anyone have to go through 8 rounds. 4th or 3rd final round, you're at the final round. And what you need to do at that round is to prove that you're bar raising. You're not up against any other candidates. They're not going to compare you with anybody else. You simply, at that moment in time, at panel, have to prove that you are a bar raising candidate. So yes, you've cleared the hurdles. You are at the final hurdle. And if you jump over that one, job done, you will get an offer. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Right, so just doing a time check. We only have 2 minutes left, so I'm not sure I have enough time to not sure I have enough time to answer another one. Although I think someone's telling me I missed one. So I tell you what, Shireen, do you want to ask me that question on YouTube? If you go back to the live that we chatted on the other day, just ask the question there and I'll answer it for you, because I don't think I have enough time to do it now. Okay, so I have shamelessly dropped in references to the Amazon Interview Wiz masterclasses throughout this, of course. I offer my Customer Obsession masterclass completely free. And I promise you, if you come and enroll for it, you will not get tons of marketing, which I know is strange because I'm a marketer, but I do not chase people after they've bought the Customer Obsession masterclass to buy anything else. My philosophy on that is, if the masterclass is good enough and meets your need, then you will recognize the value in investing in the rest of the package. And if it doesn't, then that's on me. So Customer Obsession is without question the most important leadership principle in Amazon for every single role. So please take it as a gift, take it for free, and I hope it helps you in your interviews. So I'm going to, there you go, I'm going to put the link there for you guys. If you somehow don't manage to pick up that link, It's in my profile on LinkedIn. I've got a video about it on my YouTube channel. If you watch any of my YouTube channel, there is a card at the end that will take you through to the link. So you can't miss it, honestly. Oh, Jenna's saying you highly recommend my masterclasses. I'll post that so that you can all see I'm not lying. I didn't make it up. That somebody said this. So Jenna says she highly recommends my masterclasses. She had her loop yesterday and they were invaluable. Thank you, Jenna. I really appreciate you saying that to the population. That's very kind of you. So I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for some really great questions. I'm feeling much better than I was when I started this. So maybe, I don't know, chatting to myself and staring at myself is good medicine. That's a terrible thought. How egotistical am I? You are all most welcome. Thank you for your thanks. Everybody, if you have interviews coming up, fingers crossed. I have my fingers absolutely crossed for all of you. The world is mad out there at the moment, I know. So everybody, please still stay safe and look after yourselves. And I will hope to see you all soon somewhere in this world of social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Pinterest. You can get me every one place or another. I will always try to answer your questions. Usually I manage to get through most of them within about 48 hours. So until next week, hopefully I'll see you all then. Be safe. Have a good day, night, evening, morning. Ciao, everybody.